Hello, everybody, and welcome to Getting APIs to Work. Today, we say hello to Jayadeba Jenna of PayPal. Hey, Jayadeba, thanks for joining. How are you doing?
Hey Eric, yeah, I'm doing good and nice to be in the show. We've been talking for doing this for a while now, and yeah, it's good to talk to you.
That's true.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm glad that we're finally making it happen, and thanks a lot for joining. And the reason why I proposed to do this is that you wrote this great series of articles, I think. But before we jump into those articles, I think it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about what you do and what prompted you to write these articles. So you're at PayPal, you're the director of the API platform at PayPal. So what prompted you to write those articles, which I think you wrote over a couple of months last year, right? But like what got you to the point of where you thought, oh, I should really write something?
yeah, so I run the API organization at PayPal. Um, so way back in 2013, in PayPal, we started uh, moving towards platform effort to break our monolith where we were not moving very fast. So we wanted to break our monolith and move to a microservices framework. And that's when the API transformation effort started. So from 2013 to now, which is 9 years, we have learned a lot of things in the process. So when we started, we started with a very clean set. We had nothing, no tools, no framework, right? So over the period, brick by brick, we built each of our building blocks, and somewhere in 2018, 2017, it became a very much an objective framework. Everything was set, right, including the team, the framework, the tooling, all those were set, and from there on, everything became like self-pilot. So I thought, and we are in very good state now. So now for doing any new effort, would be like using a new API protocol or anything, the framework that we have set in is like you can adopt any protocol, and it becomes a self pilot. So I wanted to share our experiences, right, with other folks in the industry. I thought this would be pretty useful for anyone starting on their API transformation journey, or even if someone is in the middle of their journey. The experience we had in PayPal and the organization of this scale, we deal with a lot of APIs, right, internal, external, and the services. So it would be very useful for others, and that's how I started writing these articles. Yeah.
I'm certain this will be useful for others, and I guess if like looking at PayPal and the scale of things, right? It's definitely something that has quite a bit of weight behind it, and it's great to hear that now you seem to have learned all those things. And when I saw those articles evolving, right, I thought, oh, that's almost a book, right? You could turn that into a book. So maybe you do that later. But before you do that, I think let's just go through the articles as you've published them so far. And I'm pretty sure that for anybody who is somewhere in a similar role than you are, there will be something that they can pick up on. So let's get started. You wrote a series of articles, there are 8 of them, and we'll link to all of these, of course. And the first one that you wrote was about the key building blocks, where you're mostly setting the stage. So what's in that article? What's to get there?
Yeah. So the first article describes, like you said, describes the key building blocks. It's basically a framework around which the organization stakeholders can work together to achieve the goal you want to achieve, everyone, and think alike. So there are the building blocks starts with the business capability model. Then the business capability model is all around your business domains, how we think in terms of business and from an outside in standpoint. So building that is important. Then the ubiquitous language, your domain language, right, the business language across for all your domains that you establish as part of the business capability model. Then it talks about the API development lifecycle. So wherein how do you take an API from concept to launch, and the four phases: align, design, and develop and deploy, the release. Those four phases, and the stakeholders and their contribution in each of those phases, for taking API concept to launch. The next one is around your developer infrastructure platform, which are all about what are the tools that you need to build in order to be successful in your API transformation journey. And the last one is more around people and process and training. Uh, Developer advocacy. How do you interact with your developers? How do you learn from them, from their integration experience, and how do you train people across the organization so everyone
Hmm.
have the same shared understanding. So these are all the building blocks. The first article talks about these building blocks, and then the next article kind of describes each of them in
Yeah, so
detail.
I think it's a very good introduction, right? Because it really tells the story of these are all the things you should think about. And if you forget any of those, that's probably going to be a problem later on. And I'm sure you
Right,
have
right.
some stories there, like where you also realized that, oh, we should have thought about that a little bit earlier. So, but I think it's really
Exactly.
good as an introduction. Then the next article in your series is about the API platform team, roles and responsibilities. And that's like very core to a lot of these API efforts, right? Where you start establishing those teams. So what are you talking about in that second article?
Yeah, the second article talks about the roles that you would need in order for you to be successful. So we have a framework, but who will do what, right? What is that role? What are the roles and responsibility? It talks more around that. So we have the business capability model. Now, how do you ensure that the API that you're building is aligned to the business capability model? It solves some business problems. So the role described in the second article, the API portfolio manager does that, right? And then how do someone ensure that you design your API as per the standards that you have come up in your organization? So and the role API designer, the API architect does that. Similarly, the engineering sponsor and the product sponsor, the business sponsor, they have specific role to do as part of the life cycle. And the API platform architect, uh, uh, that who enables these teams to work together and to make them successful. So in that article, it also describes around federation, on which is a very important part. So depending on based on your organization, you want to take that step at some point in time. So when you're starting, if you don't have a framework, right, you don't do federation, right? So you have to do first establish a framework, then start federating. So it talks about saying these are the roles that you need, but some of these roles can be federated, right, to the domain teams. And when you should federate is based on your status in your organization, right? How mature is your organization at some point, but some point in time you have to federate, right, in order to scale.
Hmm.
So the second article talks more around the roles, how do you establish this team, right, and how do you scale right further in your journey.
Yeah, and that scaling aspect I think is really important. That seems to me that is something that a lot of organizations are struggling with a little bit, right? Like maybe we start centralized, but we probably shouldn't stay centralized. So how do we do this?
Right,
And I
right.
think that idea of having clearly defined responsibilities really helps with having a better understanding of how you can do that scaling. Okay, now let's jump to your third article, which is about the business capability model, and that's something that is very dear to my heart. I think a lot of organizations really should put more effort into this. So, what do you have to say about the business capability model?
Yeah, so um, uh, API is really business, right? Your the To think about APIs, they have customers, right? And which are the developers, right? And they solve a business problem. So uh, APIs are really the products together comprise the business. So you have to think in terms of what problem they are solving for your customer. So for that, you have to have a framework that enables that thinking, the business thinking throughout your organization, right? So starting from your business stakeholder, right? Most of the time, the information doesn't flow from business stakeholder to the developers, the
Yeah.
technical stakeholder. So I think there is always a friction between business stakeholders and technical stakeholders saying, "Oh, I know this, but these folks don't understand it." Right? So I
Mm-hmm.
have a way of telling, filtering many things, and way of telling, saying, just get this software delivered, right? So uh, when you like filter out that information, things get lost. So uh, the idea here is, the third article is more around how to create a framework that enables all the stakeholders in the organization think in a consistent way and in the same way from an outside in standpoint. So there are many frameworks that you can adopt. Domain driven design is one of the very mature framework that you can use to come up with the business capability model. So this basically tells, this is your portfolio, this is your landscape, and this is how you build your APIs. So everything you build from there on, you say, okay, this API solve this business problem, right? And this is aligned to this product. That's how you do things. So establishing that is a very important step in your API transformation journey. So yeah.
And I really like that you just said, there are several models out there, and you pick domain-driven design, because I think that's true for all of the things that you're saying. There's no one true way of doing those things, but you have to do them somehow, right? And
Yeah.
that's
So
more
yeah.
important, I think, in the end, right? You need to take care of this in some shape or form, and domain-driven design is definitely something that we see is gaining more and more traction. So
Yeah,
I
and yeah, and that leads to objectivity, right? So in DDD, everything is objective, so you can think in an objective way. Otherwise, I say, you always define an API with a purpose, right? What does that purpose mean? So several people will come up with several opinions, right? So DDD,
Mhm.
you know DDD helps everyone think objectively and in a consistent way. So I think the framework like DDD is very useful in establishing your business capability models. And we have in PayPal, we use that heavily throughout. So
Mhm.
and we like the results what we got from there.
Good. Now let's jump to the next one. So then now we kind of have set the stage a little bit. We have the team responsibilities. We have a way to define capabilities, to hopefully have communication about capabilities. And now we go into the API product development lifecycle. And the first article you have around this is about API portfolio alignment. What are you looking at in this article?
Yeah, so in the previous article, we talked about, say, establishing the business capability model, which gives objectivity to your API products. Say answers why, what, and how. Right? Why you are building this API, for what purpose, those things. So most of the time in any organization, there are set of people who work on this business modeling, mostly the enterprise architecture, right? And that lives in on paper, right? And when it comes to developers, right, they don't refer it to at all. So they get into code and they forget. So that the business focus is lost, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
the developers who are really delivering the products, if they don't understand the business aspect of what they are doing, I think they would build more inside out than outside in. So it is very important to integrate the business capability model you built into your API lifecycle process. So the portfolio alignment is the first step in the API lifecycle process, the product development lifecycle process, that helps you do the analysis of your new APIs in terms of business from the capability model that we have established, right? So it helps you establish the business focus. It helps you detect any overlaps. So because every
Mm-hmm.
API that we build are always aligned to some capability in your business capability model. So when you have a new API proposal, you see, oh, this already exists. You don't build it, right? You add new features to it. So uh, uh, it helps. In summary, it helps your stakeholders throughout the organization, right, to have that consistent business focus and think from outside in standpoint, right, and integrated. When you integrate it in the development process, your code also reflects that, right? Your code reflects that.
Mm-hmm.
Your developer and the product owner, they talk the same language. Your documentation reflect that. So the portfolio alignment is about integrating the capability model with your API lifecycle process, which is a very, very important step. If you don't do that, then there is no point in building the business capability model. It just stays on paper, right? Uh,
Thanks for saying that. Yes, I think that is such a great point to make, right? It's like if it's good to have the capability map that is coming from a business point of view, but if you don't connect that to the APIs that you're building and having, there's like so much communication problems that in the end you can really ask yourself, why did we even build this capability map to begin with? So that's a
right,
good point.
right.
But now that everybody is on board with why we built this and what we built this for, so the next article then, still in the API product development lifecycle, is about design, develop, and release phases. So that's, I would say, your model of the larger API lifecycle. What is the overall idea behind those phases?
Yeah, so like you said, there are four phases: the align, design, and develop and release. So align is more about, as we discussed, establishing, ensuring that the API is built and it has a purpose, right? It solves in the overall portfolio of your APIs you expose to your customer. It solves a unique and distinct business problem. So align phase ensures that. So after that, in the align phase, because you would apply DDD in PayPal case, domain driven design, you would come up with your entire domain language, the ubiquitous language, right? So basically, by the time you finish your align phase, you have your business objects, right? All the entities defined, or the value objects defined, right? And all the aggregates defined. And you can literally translate them to the REST. If you're doing REST API, REST resource. Basically, aggregate becomes a resource, repository in DDD becomes a resource collection, entity ID becomes the code, the root entity of an aggregate, right, becomes a URI. So it literally putting them into spec. So after the align phase, everything you can the design phase is more around compliance to the protocol standard you want to build your API on, right? You might be using GraphQL, gRPC, REST. In PayPal we're agnostic, because our domain model remains constant, so you can use any protocol. So the design is more around ensuring that you meet all the non-functional aspects of your API design, including the protocol aspects, saying what are the HTTP verbs, for example, you use when you're doing
Mm-hmm.
REST APIs, and the non-functional aspects like your reliability, the availability, your resiliency, all those failure scenarios. So identity, access management, all these things, design, right? And the develop phase is implementing what we have designed. So basically in the design phase you'll have an ideal that defines your design, like open API. The develop phase implements that, but you have to ensure that the implementation matches the design, right? So there are tools that run in each of these phases, like the API conformance ensures that it is developed as per the design. And the release phase is basically releasing into production, where you do a lot of things that you need in order to operate it, right? So mostly on the operation side of it, like provisioning in the route to the facade, doing the observability configuration, all these things. And once you release, then again there is a feedback loop. We go on iterating on the API. So design, develop, and release they are more around protocol standards, your non-functional requirements, right, and how we implement, how we conform, and all these things. And each of these phases, there are stakeholders defined, and each stakeholder responsible for some sort of delivery. All right.
So you refer
That's what.
back to your article about responsibilities and roles and
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah, it's cool.
Exactly, like align phase, portfolio manager, design phase, the API architect, right, along with the
Mm-hmm.
product manager.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and they have specific deliverables, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and there is a maturity model that controls exit and entry of each phase. So, saying you meet these, criteria, then you move to the other phase. So the
Yeah.
stakeholders
Yeah.
meet those criteria, they move from one phase to another.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
uh,
I like that a lot. Yeah. No, you've got it all figured out. It's really nice.
yeah.
So now that we've developed the API according to this process and it's actually mapped back to the business capabilities, now we need to actually do it and to run it. And now you have two articles on the delivery infrastructure platform. I think we can probably summarize both of them together. So what are you covering in those two articles about the infrastructure platform?
Yeah. So our effort at PayPal has been to remove any sort of friction during the product development, right? So a developer need not wait for someone to approve their APIs, right? Uh, so we try to remove any subjectivity throughout the life cycle. So what it means is we use a framework like DDD, right, with the roles responsibility defined, and over the period we trained each of our domains to think that way. So the portfolio manager in the domain, they do the business modeling themselves, right? With the we have a certification
Mm-hmm.
process, right, where we train and
Oh,
certify those. Yeah,
nice.
a portfolio manager. So there is a, we can talk about it some other time, but there are certification process and training that we do at PayPal. So they do the
I think I
APLU
would
model
like to
now.
talk about this actually.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes,
Yeah,
another time.
yeah. And so uh, because the business objectivity of your API is very much established and done by the domain team, the other things are adhering to your standards that you put in, saying you have to use get, you have to use post, you do pagination this way. These are all objective, and these all can be automated. So the delivery infrastructure platform talks about the tools that you use to automate all these objective guidelines in your API architectural standards. So a simple example is a validator. So so whenever we have a process. So whenever someone raises a PR pull request for review, there is an API validator that runs around 160 170 rules on the PR automatically, and points out the error right at the line number, saying this is not this doesn't meet this standard, this doesn't meet that standard, and also gives the developer guidance on how to fix them, say in the comment itself, right? So um, so all the non-functional requirements or anything that you want to do with respect to adherence to the protocol standard, they are all automated. So the validator uh, does the check, developer fixes it. After you developer fixes everything, right, before the merge and after the merge, the code generator generates code, for example. So it ensures that your implementation is compliant with the API spec. So then you start coding. After you complete the coding, there is API conformance library that automatically generates test cases from your contract, right, and runs them on your implementation. So so it ensures that whatever there in the spec is what you have implemented, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it does generate many type of test cases, right? Negative, positive, fault injection, so all those sort of. And so these are like governance tooling, right? So you're making teams like autonomous by doing that. Then there are some platform tooling right, that you need to implement so that every team has some default to rely on to implement it. So for example, you say we have to implement pagination this way, right? Or you have to implement idempotency this way, idempotency pattern. So if you don't have default tooling, it's every team needs to implement every time, they have to
Yep.
implement this pattern time and again. So you don't want your developer to spend on these function non-functional things every time they are building API feature. You want them to focus on value adding feature, what matters to your business, right? Not on these repetitive, right, infrastructure features that can be
Mm-hmm.
built and automated. So the these those two articles talk about how do you build, what are those minimal set of tools, right, that you want to build in order to create these autonomous teams and have your teams focus on value adding business features, right? The other part, I think the very one of the very other important tools mentioned in that article is the discovery. So we talked about portfolio alignment. Now portfolio alignment doesn't happen automatically, right? So you have to have your discovery tool uh, uh, you know discover from your capabilities, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
when stakeholder comes, you want to say, I'm giving example, right? So they want to discover, say, what are the identity APIs I have, authentication APIs. So they start from top level business domains identity, right? Then when they browse through identity, they should see authentication, authorization, right? All those APIs under those capabilities. So even your discovery tool should need to be built around your framework that enables this business capability
Mm-hmm.
led discovery. So basically, you need to build these tools so that you can reduce friction throughout your life cycle. You make everyone think in an objective manner, and you have your stakeholders focus on what is important to you, right? And innovate there. Then building all these mundane features and the tooling that you can automate, right? And those are all the tools that the articles talk about. So these are very
And
important,
just
by the way. Yeah.
yes, they are very important. But just as a word of caution, so to speak, right, for people watching this, this PayPal is a really big company, and you have worked on this for a very long time, right? So don't be intimidated by the perfect world that Jayadeba is talking about, which is great. But it takes a little while to build up all the knowledge and build up the tooling and stuff, right? So I mean, I think you have spent a lot of time building this, and it sounds really nice, but just it's not easy, right? It's not a simple thing to do. I
Yeah,
think
no, yeah,
that's important for people to keep in mind.
right, yeah. Yeah, I think we didn't build everything when we started, so we built them
Yeah.
over a period of time. So it's okay to think that way. Say, start from what is very important from you. You can start from, for example, the validator, right? The API validator, I
Yeah.
think, is the most important thing. You can start from there, then build all other tools. You can, if you are like a very tech centric organization, you can build on your own. You can also use many of the open sources available, tools available outside, right?
Hmm.
Both in
Hmm.
the CNCF space, right? And also in the governance space, like there are many tools that developers building. So yeah, so build them progressively. You don't need to do everything from get go. So it's okay
Yeah, yeah.
to, yeah,
Otherwise, it gets a little bit too intimidating. But you've
yeah,
been at it for a while, and then you wrote the last article in your series, number 8, is summary, organizational challenges, and conclusion. I think we're kind of already talking about this a little bit. So if you had to wrap up things, it's like also maybe share like some of your learning, some of your experiences over time, like what is your message there for people who are on that journey, embarking on it, or kind of somewhere in the middle?
yeah. I think I would say most of the platform efforts or the API efforts fail because there is no framework that is basically established in an organization that makes everyone think uh, or have a common ground, right? A shared understanding of
Mm-hmm.
everything, right? And also the business stakeholders, right, need to be aware of everything, what the development team is delivering and how it is impacting the business, right? So uh, the last article talks about yeah, building is important, but you also need to ensure that there is a business value. So you need to have those matrices, you need to have the measurement criteria on how do you measure. So how the leaders understand that whatever investment I'm making, right, is contributing to my revenues, right? Or how does a leader understand that whatever investment I'm making, my developers are able to innovate, right? Innovate in a faster way. So what faster way related to prior to the start of your API journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
establishing those metrics and measuring them all the time is very important, right? That helps you get that leadership buy-in. Very, very important. The other thing is, like you said, the framework. You need to have framework. Everything that we talked about, you need to have a framework, right, with the roles responsibility defined. That helps everyone contribute. The other thing is organizing your teams in a way that makes you successful. So when you think about doing your API platform journey with a framework in mind, and with business focus and leveraging a framework like domain driven design, uh, it helps you get into that level where you can think of creating organizations, right? Basically self-reliant organization without with very little dependency between them, and so each team can deliver on their own, they can innovate on their own. So yeah, having that successful team and structure is very important. The other thing is training. So you establish a framework, but you have to keep training everyone, right? So there would be in an organization, so when you establish a team, be it your business team, the portfolio governance, be it a design team, there would be a lot of churns all the time, right? So people will go in, go out, all these things. So you have to keep training everyone. So there has to be a framework that trains your developers, your product managers, your business, all the stakeholders, even your leadership, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that helps the organization remain focused and again have that shared understanding, right? So training is very important, and developer evangelism, which is often ignored, right, in most of the organization. You need to have that specific role, so someone needs to go and talk with those developers. They have to talk to they have to understand their pain points, and that has to get in as a feedback loop to your the product development, right? And that is also a very important. So all
Yeah.
these together, right, uh, so the last article basically summarize on, there is not one thing, but you have to do several things and several things together, right? And focus, right, over a continuous period of time. And this is not like one-off journey. If you really want to be like product centric and platform centric and innovate faster, right, it has to be continuous journey, right? It's not one off where you are done, right? No, it's you are always on this journey, right?
Thanks for
So
saying that, because that is so much of a vibe that you somehow can feel in organizations when you go in and they talk about APIs or digital transformation or any of this, and you can feel how they really basically they want to let's get this over with, right? Like, tell us what to do, then we'll do it, and then we can keep doing what we did before, and then you try to tell them, no, this is not how it works, right? Like, from now on things will be different. And I think this is really also one of the key takeaways.
and and one more thing, I think very important
There's
thing,
one more thing, yes.
product thinking. I think product thinking, if you're running an API organization, product thinking is very, very important. So I think this is where we get most of the organization get lost. So they get into managerial mandates, right? Manage mandate meaning you come up with a framework and say you have to use this, right? So when you say you have to use it, you lose that, the product thinking. Instead of saying that way, you say, okay, here is the framework, right, we want to use, and learn from the usage of that framework from the developer and keep improving them. Think your internal developers as like your customers for your framework,
Mm-hmm.
right? The for your business capability model, for the tools you have built, for your API development lifecycle that you have come up with. Think of the internal developers as your customers, and understand from their usage pain points and keep improving them, right? And that's how, which is very important, right? So uh, product thinking is very important if you're running a API organization. So always use product thinking than taking the shortcut where you do managerial mandates, right, which doesn't work. It creates a lot of friction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
um, um,
So not just
uh,
APIs as products, but like anything that you produce, right? It's like whatever
yeah,
we have
exact.
to do along this API journey has to be kind of productized
Yes.
so that
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
understand and can use these things. Yeah, that's a good point.
Exactly.
I think, like I said, right, I think the most important message here is not so much exactly what to do for all these things that we just went through, and thanks a lot for your explanations of all of this, but it's really that all these things are essential, right? You have to do something about all these things. If you forget them, it's probably not going to end well. And I think that, at least from my side, really is the main takeaway that I got from your article series and also now from this conversation, that there are just so many facets to this, and they're all kind of interdependent. So you have to make sure you cover all of these, and then at least you are in a good starting point, right? And then it's still a long journey and it's going to take a while and you
Yeah.
have to keep improving. But that was my main takeaway. It's like your perspective has to be wide enough.
Yes. No.
Thanks
Yeah.
a lot
Take this
for
as.
walking us through this. Do you have any like final words for our listeners?
Yeah. I think. Yeah. If you take everything that there in the article as a starting point, I would say every organization is very unique, right? So you have to also think about your culture, right? It doesn't, whatever there in the article doesn't mean if you follow them blindly, you may or may not be successful. So take these as like reference guidelines, and think what will work inside your organization, so based on your culture, right? And how do you know? So sometime some organization, federated governance will work right from get go, right? Some organization don't work, right? So it depends on the maturity of the organization. So I would say, yeah, take these as guidelines, and I'm sure you would be successful, right, wherever in your journey. And yeah, and we are seeing that in PayPal, the V2 APIs that we had since like 2018, or anything we built after 2017, 2018, they're very consistent, right? So and it is on a self pilot, so it works. Even it is not person dependent. So I think, uh, yeah. So
So you can, and
the
that you can just take some time off and write articles about it, which is great because we all benefit from it.
Yeah, no, it's always great to share with the community. I think we
Yeah.
need to share, right? And you have been doing a lot of good work, Eric. You and many other community, and it's important, right? So happy to share anything from the experience I had at PayPal, and we'll share. I'll keep sharing more. So more to come.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Jayadeva. I think it is really important that people look at this and take it as a way to better understand what that journey looks like. thank you for taking the time. Once again, right? If you would like to explore these articles, I will link them, I think, from the video and put everything in the description, so you can find them there. And of course, also, if you have any comments or feedback, please let us know. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And with that, I think we're done. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Jayadeba for being here, and bye bye until next time.
Thank you, Eric.